I'm Jack Edwards.
And I'm Herman Tømmeraas.
And this is the Yes, No, Maybe podcast.
Open that. We were told
Open
to
these
open these
for-
straight away because we are filming. There we go. Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for being here. My name is Kendal Barrett. I am one half of Yes, No, Maybe, a podcast which is all about the in-between moments in life. Today's talk isn't about perfection. Instead, it's about the process. It's about the pivots, the setbacks, and the big yeses that shape who we become.
I'm Anna Howell, the other half of Yes, No, Maybe, and we're here with two brilliant voices, actor Herman Tømmeraas and YouTuber and writer Jack Edwards, who know what it means to live out loud, on camera, on page, and on purpose.
Woo.
So let's dive right in. Thank you for being here and part of our story.
Thanks for having us.
Welcome, guys. So I want to start with a quote from a British author called Philip Pullman. And the quote is, "After nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in the world." We're all storytellers in life. We are all storytellers. Why do you think stories have made an impact that they do? And is there a story in particular that has really resonated with you and shaped who you've become?
Ooh. I think stories are in everything. Joan Didion said, we tell ourselves stories in order to live, and I think that's important. I think from when you're a child, you enjoy storytelling, but you also become a storyteller. And every single person is a storyteller too. And I remember someone saying to me, asking me to describe my friends, and I said, I feel like everyone I love is a great storyteller. And they were like, well, it's kind of like you have a library of friends. And I think that's kind of true for life, really, that there are stories in everything. A story that has really resonated with me, maybe, I think 1984 by George Orwell was like the first time I read something and thought like, oh, that's what you can do with words on a page. That's what you can do just through language. You can make someone feel galvanized and radical and political, and that's really important too. So.
Yeah. Herman?
Right. I kind of feel the same. I think storytelling for me is, generally cinema, if we're talking cinema, is such a nice escape for me. I use it as a little portal out of my own existence, and I can kind of forget about everything that kind of either bothers me or that I stress about. And I guess it's always been that way. You know, with theater or music or whatever, there's always been storytelling. So it's a big part of what I do, and one of the biggest reasons why I do what I do, because I want to be a part of that storytelling and be able to do that for other people as well. I don't have a specific story that's inspired me that comes to mind right now, but I'm sure there are some if I really think about it. I'll let you know like in 10 minutes if something pops up. I'll just throw it into the conversation.
Have you ever acted in a role that's left a lasting impact on you, and have you ever read anything that's kind of changed your personality or the way you see yourself?
That's a good question. I think a lot of actors, there's certainly stories about actors that's gone into characters deeply and they kind of never comes completely out of it, or the character stays with them and, for a little bit after. I've never experienced it. I'm not a method actor per se, so I don't jump into something. I don't change my life for 4 months before I start shooting. And it's not because I don't believe in that kind of way of doing it. It's more because I haven't had a character I've needed to do that with. I've done dark characters that certainly made an impact, and I've done background work that has scared me and kind of left a little bit of a mark, but I don't have them in my head still directing what I do.
Is that background work into the characters themselves, or?
Yes, I did a movie about sleep paralysis and a woman experiencing a lot of sleep, like dark nightmares while you're halfway awake, halfway asleep. And I spoke to a lot of people that had it. I read books about it, and it kind of left me scared a little bit to fall asleep for some time. I tried practicing. I don't know if anyone's heard about it. There's a way you can try to make yourself stay in control in your dreams while falling asleep, while doing a specific action to make yourself be in control.
That's like lucid dreaming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, that was what I was trying to find in my head.
That's
Lucid
the word.
dreaming.
There
Exactly.
we go.
Oh my God, that sounds terrifying.
Oh yeah. It is a scary phenomenon. When you really start looking into it, that whole nightmare aspect of dreaming and stuff like that is quite scary. I don't remember why I explained this now. But
I mean, it's a fun fact, and
Right.
it's interesting for sure. I'm intrigued about the process of. I know we've just kind of spoken about a little bit about the process of. You're not a method actor, but you have just recently done a film called Sweetness.
Yes.
Where you play a musician. Tell us a little bit about that process, because it's very different to Ragnarok, which is on Netflix. If you guys haven't seen it, Herman is responsible for increasing my screen time in the last few days, especially as I was trying to research him. It's brilliant.
Thank you.
But what is the process like preparing to play a musician on stage?
My dad's a singer and my mom's a dancer, so getting into acting was very natural for me. And I've always wanted to do music, and with this character I got to be a part of writing the music with Blitz Berlin. I got to the main soundtrack of the film. It's a very dark film. The main soundtrack is me singing. So in the movie I'm doing stage work, I'm performing in front of an audience, which I was super scared about until I realized my audience was paid to be an audience. So I could more or less do whatever I wanted. People were cheering anyway. But it's very nice to be able to do something that I've always kind of dreamt about doing, which is one of my favorite parts of being an actor. You can do things you normally can't.
Well, let's take it on to Jack, the king of content. I mean, your videos are phenomenal, and the amount of videos that you put out seems somewhat impossible for any normal human being. So what is that process like? How do you come up with an idea? I mean, everything's surrounded by books, but there's so much to say.
Yeah.
What is that process like?
It kind of started through boredom from lockdown, where I was like at home. I'd moved in with a guy who was Scottish, and in the second lockdown, they kept the gyms open in Scotland. And so on day 2 of lockdown, he's like, I'm actually gonna go back to Glasgow. You're on your own, kid. So I was doing a lockdown, like fresh out of university. I didn't have a job. I was like desperately trying to find a job. And so we didn't have Wi-Fi. I lived on Kentish Town Road, and apparently it's extremely difficult for them to, if you want Wi-Fi on Kentish Town Road, they have to rewire the entire street. And so everyone, no. So everyone from BT who would come over was like, that's not my problem. And so we had no Wi-Fi for an entire lockdown. And so what I would do was go and sit outside Pret, who were doing like coffee out the window, but they had their Wi-Fi switched on. So I would go with my laptop and I would sit outside Pret and I would download job applications from LinkedIn and upload content. And I would go back and I would finish writing my job applications, and then I was reading loads to get myself through the lockdown. And it turns out people started to care about what I was reading. And I was just finishing off my English degree, where I'd been assigned what to read the entire time. And I think I was in the process of falling back in love with reading. And so maybe that resonated with people who also during a pandemic were trying to do the same thing. So I think ultimately the community was what made me feel like it was worth continuing to do and sharing. And so it's kind of become symbiotic, where my community of readers send me things like, you would love to read this, I think you would love this thing, and then I share what I'm loving as well. So I think in terms of making content, it's the excitement of that there's always something new to create and talk about and read and discuss. And talking about books leads to conversations about everything: religion, sex, love, hate, death, anything. So it kind of leads me to a wide surface area of discussion points. So I guess I'll keep going until there's nothing left to talk about.
Which will never happen.
Full of short attention spans as well. The fact that you're promoting reading and getting people reading again is so powerful.
Well, I think it's a muscle, and in the same way that when you go to the gym, you think about both strength and endurance. I think that's also reading. Like, there's the strength of like, do I understand what I'm reading? But there's also the endurance of like, can I read for a prolonged period of time? And those are things that the more you train that muscle in your brain, the easier it gets. So I think that the just reading for 10 minutes each night can help you to build that muscle over time until you're sitting and reading for like 2 hours at a time.
Now, you've both kind of grown up through your youth being these these figures. How does getting older change with your community? Do they grow with you? Do you kind of have to adapt with the content that you're pushing out?
Yeah, mine have kind of like watched me grow up, which is really weird. I think the weird thing about that on the internet specifically is that it's a flat kind of lateral plane. So like the 2017 version of me exists alongside the 2025 version of me. The pandemic version of me in 2020 exists alongside me right now.
Do you ever rewatch those old videos?
I did for the first time really recently, and I think it was enough time where I no longer felt embarrassed. It feels like meeting an old friend, and you're just like, oh, good for you, you know.
I guess that's a big, like, sort of a difference between what you do and I do.
Yeah.
I guess because when the community I have around me on social media and stuff, when they started growing, they start kind of growing with a character rather than me as a person. So instead of someone seeing me on the street saying, Herman, they kind of look at me and they say a name for a character. Like they say Fjord and they do which is something I've done in the show like once. Which is fun, but the challenging thing for me with it is that no matter how much you've watched cinema and how much you've watched TV shows, there is still a little bit of an impression that you get with the character that kind of sticks with you. Which I've done 2 movies in a row where I was a rapist in both, which was like a tough, gruesome character. It's been important for the stories. But that too, I started kind of thinking maybe now I have to kind of step away from that and do something that's a bit more nice, because I could see people starting to hold back a little bit around me. But that's just a big part of it. People grow with more my characters and my work rather than me as a human, which is, part of it.
I'm fascinated by the inner critic that we all have, you know, the self-doubt and the things that we tell ourselves. And you're in the public all the time. So how do you manage, the voice in your head and basically tell it to shut up when it gets too loud? What do you have something that you do to quiet it?
What's your process?
What's your process?
I think that we're all still figuring that out. I don't know if the human brain is wired to be perceived by that number of people. Like, I still don't think that my brain fully comprehends it. So I wish there was a process, but I think it's just taking each day one at a time.
It's
each comment one at a time.
I think it doesn't really matter if you're. It's nice if you get a lot of good, let's say online, you get a lot of good comments and things. It's great. But the truth is, if you get one comment saying something negative, that is what you're going to remember at the end of the day. And no matter.
Why do we do that? Why?
I don't know. I mean, I don't have any good answers about it. But all the people I've looked up to, all like forever actors or people in the industry generally, no matter how perfect they seem in my head and how, I've thought maybe if I looked like that, maybe if I acted like that, whatever. These people have all had troubles as well. So I think, no matter how big or how low or whatever, where you are along the line, everyone has the same kind of mentality, which is everyone's trying to aspire to be better and being very self-critical in the process, which is something I think everyone should try to work through.
Yeah, be kinder to ourselves, for sure.
So what's more addictive, the grind, the growth, or the attention?
What's more addictive?
Be honest.
Yeah, come on, be honest.
We want the real.
Probably the worst thing I can say. I think the most addictive thing is the growth for me. I think the grind is fun, but it is work. You have to put in the work to get somewhere. But I think the growth, when you see that thing starts to roll or the ball starts to roll, that's the most fun thing. The momentum when it starts to build up, which is sadly the worst part about it too. When it stops, that is what's the most challenging. So it's a love-hate relationship for me.
How do you pivot that time between the highs and the lows between work? You get a big film and then you've got to kind of sit between your next role.
I play video games, dude. I play
video games.
No. How do I pivot it? Lucky enough, I have a very supportive girlfriend who's a hard worker, so I use her as inspiration to push harder. But it is tough when there's a downtime, which is all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
The job of an actor,
Yeah.
you have a lot of gaps, a lot of in-betweens. Yeah.
So to go back to that question, Jack, what would you say?
I think that the grind builds grit, and then growth gives you hope, and attention gives you validation. So it's sort of like a mix of all of those things. I think that, yeah, growth probably feels the most fulfilling because it feels like there's growth externally and internally. The interesting thing about social media, and I'm thinking about this more because you're talking about how it is as an actor, I think with social media, it's such an interesting trajectory because you start out by doing so much for free and not making any money, and so it's quite an odd path because there's so much in the early days where you literally are like just doing it all for the love of the craft, and that is truly like the real grind. And I think you'll never work as hard as those first few months when you're just trying anything. I also think there's no formula because what makes each individual person successful is their unique take on something. It's not just following this strategy that others have done before. I think going back to the idea of storytellers, like the reason that people keep coming up brand new is because they have new and innovative stories to tell, and unique ways of telling them. So I don't know if any of them is more addictive, because in my career I've sort of felt them pulls from each one at different times. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that growth is the one where you feel like, okay, I'm doing something internally as well. And what I'm developing, I'm getting better at this, which is hard. And maybe that is what you get from like watching back your old work. Is like, oh, okay, I actually am a bit better at this now.
Yeah, sometimes it helps to just rewatch and to see, okay, I can change that. Or, you learn by seeing and by doing. It's sometimes the best school as well. I'd love to know the moment that you got your first big yes, I'm sure there's a lot of creatives in the audience, and I know for Anna and I, we're both creatives, and we're still trying to get there, whatever there is. But when we have had a big yes, it's a moment to remember and to cherish. It's those small wins that ultimately become your big ones. So I don't know, is there something that you guys could share, maybe when you got your first role, or when something happened with your YouTube channel, just a story that you could
I remember so clearly being invited to see Ben Howard at the Eden Project, and I love Ben Howard. If Ben Howard has 0 fans, I am dead. So I was like, I got invited by his team, I guess, to go to the concert.
Yes,
and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And I said to my dad, like, at the bottom of the email it says, "How much do you want?" And I said, like, what does that mean? And he said, like, they're going to pay you. I was like, they're going to pay me? For what? Like, why would they pay me? And then we went back and we said, like, £20?
I'll go for free. I'll just be there.
And they said, we'll give you 50. And I was like, I can't believe it. And I bought 2 Ben Howard records with that money, and that just felt like a crazy moment of the first time that I had like been compensated or remunerated for like what I was doing, and that to me that felt like this ultimate validation. That was really cool.
Awesome.
And I love Ben Howard.
Ben Howard's great.
Also, Forbes 30 under 30. Congratulations.
Yeah, can we all give a round of applause for Forbes 30 under 30? I mean,
So that was crazy.
That's a moment.
Yeah, like very unexpected. I was cleaning my apartment and my phone kept buzzing, and I was like, oh, that's weird. My Ben Howard album hasn't paused, even though my phone is ringing. And so I went over to my phone, and I was getting all these messages that said, congratulations. And I had to reply to someone saying, like, I'm so sorry, but like, for what? Like, thank you so much, but what for? And Forbes had just released their 30 under 30 list for Europe, and somehow I had like wormed my way on there. But I think the imposter syndrome never really disappears there. Like, it always feels odd to see yourself amongst those people. But that felt like a nice indicator that I was doing something right, maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's awesome. I wish I would have experienced that. Well, I haven't done that. I think I think the point where I kind of realized that something is working was I did a tiny TV show, like an internet streaming show in Norway called Skam, which it started off with the tiniest thing. We were one person as a DOP and one producer, and the rest of us were actors. We were acting in our breaks from school with our own clothes, and everyone was just doing that. We were paid, nothing, but it was just fun, right? We just did it for fun. And we had no people watching. We didn't tell anyone about it. And then by season 3, every country in the world had kind of bought the rights for it. So it kind of had this rocket reaction. And it actually happened for me. I realized it while I was in London, when I was 18 with my acting class. We were here for the weekend and we did some theater. And we walked into a museum and we all had to turn off our phones, flight mode, and put it away while walking in. And when I got back out, when I walked in, I had 2,000 followers on Instagram. When I walked out, I had 4. And that for me was mind-blowing. And it just didn't stop. It kind of kept on going up into like passing 1 million. And that's kind of when it started, while I was in that museum. And after that, I kind of realized, okay, now I'm on to something. There's something that works here that is fun to do.
That must do something for the ego, surely.
I was fairly certain I was going to lose myself at one point. My mom and dad were very clear on one thing. They said, if you want to do acting, if you want to pursue this and do this full time, then you have to do one thing to have our support, and that is you have to serve 1 year in Norway in the army. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do that. So while we were doing this show that was growing, I spent 1 year serving as a King's Guard in Norway.
Wow.
And then went back to acting afterwards.
What did that teach you? I mean, what was that experience like?
It was a nice way of being reminded that everyone's equals. Instead, not that I've ever thought anything else, but it was just nice having a structure for a year where I woke up at 7, I went to bed at 11, and that's what I did, and I knew what I was going to do during those hours. Everyone wore uniforms, everyone was the same. I had a buzz cut, did not pull it off, but I had a buzz cut nonetheless, and doing that for a year. It was just a nice way of learning respect and understanding what privilege is, and yeah.
Wow. I want to talk a little bit about AI and content. Jack, how will you go about future-proofing yourself and the content that you create with the rise of AI? Or, I mean, we should all try to use it. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, I think it's a twofold answer, because I think on one hand, we actually need legislation around creative industries. I believe that very strongly, that AI is something that we as humans created, and it's something that we as humans can regulate. Within reason, but I do think that for consumers, when art is made by AI, they should be aware of it. I think, I work in publishing, and so literature feels at risk. It feels something that I'm so scared for the future of. I believe that storytellers will continue to thrive if we allow them to. And AI is not one of those storytellers that I want to thrive, or that I believe can thrive, because it can only replicate things that have come before it. It can't innovate. So I hope that we can see more regulation from governments in terms of like putting an asterisk on the cover of a book if it was written by AI to signify that it was written by AI, so that artists are protected, so that consumers are protected. In terms of myself, I'd like to think that it's more interesting to listen to a real human speak than to listen to AI. But as AI gets increasingly convincing, and you could start to craft it into the exact thing you want it to be. I don't know what the possibilities of that future technology is, and it worries me for sure. So I hope that we continue to support human art, and that we continue to prioritize human art, and that's my hope. And I'll continue to champion human art written by human beings.
Yeah, it is scary. I mean, I write screenplays as well, and it's quite terrifying, where it's like, I haven't even got there yet, and it might completely be taken over by AI. The same with actors and their faces and being on screen. Yeah,
it changes so fast. I have a friend of mine in LA who's doing full-time voice acting. That's his full-time job, and he's really good at it. And he was made an offer, I think 2 weeks ago, by a company that wanted to buy the rights for his voice, to make this AI thing that you could literally use for all voice acting everywhere. And they offered him £350,000 for the rights to his voice. And the kid in me was like, oh, that's a lot of money. Nice, that would have been fun. But then again, it would have meant that no company would ever have to hire him again.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, that's not a lot of money.
Right?
For his
No.
voice.
If you take those money and you divide it on a lifetime, it's not a lot. And I think that's what's scary as actors as well. That I think that's also why the long why the strike was going on for so long, and they were trying to establish some ground rules so these things can't happen. And within the acting industry, there's a big part of the industry too, and the process is pre-work or work before, then you shoot it, and then afterwards you do ADR, right? You re-record the lines, you fix everything. ADR could potentially be erased if you do AI, because you could just use the samples to just recreate the lines. So that's also something that's, I mean, I feel like our work is getting smaller and smaller and smaller if this is being allowed to be used. But there seem to be rules and things being established to save us.
If you guys were starting out today, what's one thing that or one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's trying to jump like headfirst into both of your industries?
I think something I wish I would have known is that I always thought growing up that auditions and self-tapes, that was how to get into it. And it is, by all means, a good way to be seen. But human connection, I think, will always be at the bottom of basically everything. When you hire someone, you hire them because of what they were able to do, obviously. But you also hire a person to work with. So I'd say to myself and anyone else, dare to be a bit more out there. If there is a place you know that there can be people that will be nice to get to know, dare to be present there and not wait for it. I spent way too many years sitting at home waiting for it to happen. I should have moved to London way earlier. But yeah, push a bit more.
I guess I would say make it exist now and then make it good later. You know, I think the first step is to just to make it something tangible, to make it something that you are working on, starting the journey, and then you can polish things, you can redraft, you can edit later down the line. You don't even have to publish the thing that you start with, as long as you're trying. And I think we can become paralyzed by waiting for ourselves to be ready for something.
Yeah.
But if you do that, you never will be. There's beauty in the messiness of trying, and there's beauty in the scrappiness of being at the beginning of that journey. So I always look back at the earliest things that I did with fondness, because it was me working it out. It was like the construction lines and the framework of what I am able to do now, I think. So I think making it exist is the most important first step.
Starting is always the hardest.
Yeah,
always.
And I love, I think it's James Clear in Atomic Habits where he says to, instead of being like, oh, I wish I was someone who went for runs. I wish I was a runner.
Go for a run.
You go for the run, and then you tell yourself, I am a runner.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many times you've done it.
Yeah.
I am a runner. I'm a person who runs. And sometimes it's just that semantic shift that helps you to believe it yourself. Like I am a person who does this, and it's sort of, you kind of can trick your mind into believing it.
Yeah, because your mind doesn't know. I mean, what we think is what we are.
Yeah.
So,
and the more you tell yourself something, the more you do start to believe it. So I think sometimes there's a bit of magic in the delusion as well.
that's a great segue. Because do you think that you have to be a little bit delusional to make your dreams happen?
I think so.
Yeah. Terrible time to drink.
Yeah.
Bad timing on me. Delusional? Yeah, maybe. At least you have to be a believer. You have to be a dreamer to be able to do something that requires so much time, and there's such a small percentage of chance to be able to do it. You have to be a bit crazy to do it. But still, try. It is really, the process is at one point almost as fun as making it anyways. If your thrive is to make content and have fun with it and be creative and be dramatic and do these things, then do it. It's possible to do that and other things at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. If someone in the audience is ready to take their first big leap into the creative world, what would you guys say? I mean, I know we've just said just start.
Yeah.
So we've kind of just said that, but is there anything else maybe that one piece of advice?
I suppose maybe just that your interests make you individual and they make you unique. That weird cross-section of like, oh, you love maths and philosophy. It's that middle bit that makes you special and that makes you unlike anyone else, where all of your interests start to merge. In the Venn diagram of who you are, it's that middle spot that is like what you should be talking about, I think. So I really love, I've always been fascinated by culture, specifically pop culture, but also literature, and that led me to making YouTube videos about, books that are referenced on Harry Styles' first album. He quotes Bukowski and Murakami, and looking at shows like The White Lotus or Sex Education and finding all the books that are used as props, and then talking about them online. And in doing so, I was able to add texture to those shows. Like or that music, you don't need to know those references, but if you do, it just adds that extra little pizzazz, for want of a better word.
Pizzazz,
there was definitely a better word I could have thought of. But I think it's that thing that only you, or like you are one of the few people who has that like cross section of interests and fascinations, and that's what makes you unique. So finding that thing that is yours is, I think, where I would start.
What I want to say is that there's nothing right or wrong about how you proceed with acting. That's in my opinion the best thing about it. You can be extremely, like do 10 years of school and be fantastic, but you can also have no school education whatsoever and just have a talent for it. There's always going to be characters, there's always going to be stories, there's never a right or wrong time in your life to try. So if there's anyone I want to try, I'd say go for it. You don't lose anything on trying, and it's so fun. Yeah, that was.
You're always going to learn.
Huh?
Regardless, your mistakes, you're going to learn.
Yeah, you can't do anything wrong. There's things to learn from everyone. Just be a sponge. Yeah. Learn from everyone.
And there's space for you too. I think that like often when we look at creative industries, we think, oh, it's oversaturated, or like all the successful people are already successful. There's no space for me here. But you carve out that space for yourself, and we're waiting for your stories, because like going back to your very first question about storytelling and storytellers, I do believe that it's not you're never going to say like, I think I've met enough people now. I don't want to meet any new people, because there's always new stories that you haven't heard yet out there. Yeah. So that's what each person has. So there is space for you in every creative industry.
Yeah. Also, this isn't a dress rehearsal. This is it. Mm-hmm. So if we're not going after what we love, what are we doing? I think those are great answers, guys. We're going to open up to the audience. If anyone has any questions, please can someone have a few questions?
For Jack or for Herman?
We do. Yeah. Do we have a roaming mic, please? Thank you.
Hi. Just a question for Jack. What do you think like the future of YouTube is in the next 10 years? And is there any type of content you want to make but you don't feel that currently fits your brand of content? Or something like, whether it's long-term or like long-form kind of documentary style? Or
maybe, I love that idea. I think that we think of social media as kind of like an attention economy. And I think you can get fooled into thinking that people only have short-term attention spans and that people only want things that are really snappy and quick. But actually, I think on YouTube, long-form content is getting longer. And that's really exciting because we have kind of decision fatigue, right? When you go on Instagram or whatever, there just seems to be so much to look at. I think that actually it's really nice to be able to sit with something that is long, that is an hour long or is an hour and a half long. So I actually think that video content will get longer. And I'm trying to go more into analytical content, zooming out and looking at the industry as a whole, as well as just individual books. So I think that's my next step. But I have faith that people still want long-form content.
Hopefully.
I hope so.
Hi. Oh. Hello. Hi. I wanted to ask, this is kind of for everyone, all four of you. I wanted to ask you what you do when you feel like, when you're in a despondent moment, when you feel like you're on the cusp of something, but it's like the momentum isn't momentuming, and you're there, but it's just not like What do you do in those moments? What helps you get through?
I mean, for me, they say persistence is key. You just have to keep persevering. And I know that's easier said than done. But, I moved to London 8 years ago, and I came to this exact venue because I'm from South Africa, and the rand to the pound is non-existent. And I couldn't afford really to live. It sounds more dramatic than it is, but I came to this church because I had free coffee and free donuts. And I was here in this venue, and 8 years later, I'm on a stage talking. launching our podcast, you know? And I think just sometimes if you have a clear vision in your head, you just have to keep seeing it over and over and over and over and over again, and don't let anything, waver. Don't let anything get in the way, almost like tunnel vision. So for me, that's what I would say.
Wow.
I try to have at least a couple of things I need to do during a day. If I feel like I'm in a super low, and I've done the self-tapes I have, and I've done kind of like the work I had lined up that day, I always try to fill it up with some things more, so I can feel like at least I've done everything I can today.
Yeah.
At least I've sent those extra emails and reached out to these people, and then I've been to the gym. At least I've had that full, I've done everything I can do to improve myself for the day, or practice an accent or whatnot.
Hi, my name is Mesa. I'm a radio presenter for Represent Radio. I'm also a founder of a CIC called Forte, so that's fostering opportunities and resources for teaching and empowerment. My question for the entire panel is, are there any specific self-care routines that continues to ground you, or affirmations that you do on a daily basis that just keeps you in the moment?
I have 3 things. Meditation, 10 minutes morning and night. Affirmations, I listen to the same one every day. It's this man on YouTube that kind of says these words twice and I repeat them. And gym. Gym is my everything. I think you're quite similar. You have
I'd say gym too, but there's something I've done, and it's going to sound so dumb out of context. What I tend to do, and don't take this the wrong way, I tend to interview myself in the mirror, which is more or less just me sitting in front of a mirror. I'm not even joking. I'm sitting there with a coffee cup, and I'm talking to myself and asking myself a little bit about how I'm doing. And for my sake, looking myself in the eye sometimes kind of makes me feel a bit, okay, I'm here.
What questions are you asking yourself?
Huh? So that's depends where I am in my life. Usually there's how are you doing? How easy is everything? Is it hard? What's going on and why? And sometimes it's just good to look myself in the eye sometimes and just put myself a bit in place if I'm being too mean to myself or too nice to myself.
We are officially out of time, but thank you guys so much for being here today. It's been an absolute joy just finding out more about you, and yeah, we're so excited to watch both your careers thrive.
And for everyone here, we challenge you to leave today with one maybe you're ready to make a yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.